Hello YouTube, it's Shadow Hero 90, welcoming you to the 5th season of Sexism in Movies and TV. Now, there are many reasons as to why I do this review show. One of which is the portrayal of men in the media is downright horrific. It's an insult. It's why most kids think their dads are idiots. But when it comes to women, they get the get out of horrible portrayal free card. And although I do review a lot of shows and movies that are aimed at a mature adult audience, most of what I review is aimed at a young audience. And yes, I kind of do blame shows like Adventure Time and Loud House and the bulk of what usually appears on this show as being the reason that teenage boys have such low self-esteem. Which is actually kind of true when you think about it from a psychological perspective. When every single portrayal, well, almost every single portrayal of men and boys on TV and in movies is negative, of course these teenage boys, when they first hit puberty, are going to have horrible self-esteem. So, in that regard, I know that I have a noble cause when I rip apart these televised pieces of shit. So anyways, on with the review.
Okay, KO. Generally speaking, I like this show. But it had a number of messed up episodes. And no, in this episode of Sexism in Movies and TV, I'm not going to be reviewing the one that you think. In this episode, I'm going to be reviewing the episode Mystery Science Fair 201X. Believe me, it has a lot of problems, and that actually goes beyond the fact that it's a piss-poor parody of Dexter's Lab. This episode is going to be much like the episode where I reviewed the Ollie's Pack episode, Sister Save Me, where I give you a brief overview of the episode, and then I explain what's wrong with the episode and why it is wrong. The episode begins with KO and Dendy talking while playing with their POW card. The subject of shadowy figure comes up, i.e. the guy who unleashed TKO in that two-part special. And it is made clear to the audience that both Shadowy Figure and KO are not topics that KO wants to talk about. But that doesn't stop Dendy. And believe me, she does stuff without permission in other episodes too. Their teacher, Miss Quantum, comes in, very upset over the bad grades her class has been turning in, and announces Mystery Science Fair 201X. They set up a potential hero-villain rivalry between Dendy and Miss Quantum. Dendy reveals that the science project that her and KO are gonna work on is essentially going to be how to bring out TKO. KO makes it clear that he does not want to do this, but Dendy ignores all warnings because she thinks she knows everything. Dendy built a secret lab underneath the school because this is a Dexter's Lab parody. After putting KO through physical trauma and every torture her wicked little mind could think up, KO finally snaps when she accidentally ordered a pizza with olives on it and starts to turn into TKO. Then the little bitch decides to torture KO emotionally and psychologically by simulating that Gars gets burned to the ground and he could only save one person, but since he couldn't pick, they all died in the simulation. KO turns into TKO and rightfully calls Dendy out as the cunt that she is. TKO destroys Dendy's lab, and it's just when TKO is about to smash Dendy's last invention does it actually sink into her tiny skull what a cunt she's been. Dendy apologizes, and TKO turns back into KO. He falls, and she catches him. KO actually wants to try and find a way to control TKO's power. They get a new project for Science Fair 2-1 and then we get this egregious ending sequence that says the end with apologies to the crew of Dexter's Lab. Something that I don't believe in the slightest. The shit-brained clowns who wrote this episode clearly do not respect Dexter's Lab in the slightest. And I'm pretty sure they're really bitter towards that show because it's a Cartoon Network classic and was deemed good enough to be revived and given an actual ending. Something that OKKO is by no means worthy of. But I'll get to that later in the review. Okay, this is Grandy Tartakovsky, and since I know I butchered that, I'm going to be referring to him as GT throughout this review, okay? This man created Dexter's Lab, Samurai Jack, and the Adult Swim hit Primal. This man created Dexter's Lab, Samurai Jack, and the Adult Swim hit Primal, such as Rick and Morty, or Ball Masters 9009, essentially did a okko parody that essentially said it's a superhero show that has no clue how superheroes even work. I'm pretty sure Ian Jones-quartey would not take it well at all, especially if they commented on the fact that okko is aimed at a really young demographic, and in many episodes he gets political in the worst of ways. Now, I'm probably gonna make a lot of enemies with what I'm about to say next, but hear me out. The idea of a gender-swapped Dexter's Lab would not only be an insult to the actual show, but, this parody that, okko did of Dexter's Lab, Johnny Test did it way better. Because the two episodes that went after Pokemon were at least watchable. I can actually see satisfaction over Teletoon essentially portraying Ash Ketchum as an egocentric jackass who's willing to break the rules to win. I cannot take pleasure in seeing KO essentially tortured in every way possible until he eventually snaps and becomes TKO and goes on a rampage. Okay, and another thing that makes this episode the abomination that it is Dendy's nerd girl way of thinking. I know that nerds hold school up as an unquestioned good, but in this episode, Dendy acts like getting a bad grade or not winning first prize at the science fair would be the worst thing ever. The girl from Harry Potter. She, in one of these crappy movies, actually said that being expelled would be worse than being killed by whoever was the bad guy in that movie. Now, we have an actual word for people who have that kind of way of thinking. That word is greedy. And truth be told, the kind of person who would willingly say that being expelled from school would be worse than dying are usually power hungry, they crave authority at all costs, and they are the kind of people who use others to get what they want and would value money over human life. In other words, they're not the kind of people you would ever want to see make it past junior high. And they're definitely not the kind of people you'd want to see in positions of power. And that was Dendy for most of this episode. In all fairness, she used KO and tortured him for her own personal gain. Yes, I know she chose to catch him over saving some stupid machine, but that does not make any of the damage she did go away. In fact, she was actually let off the hook. And the truth is, a more fitting punishment for what Dendy did in this episode would have been for Miss Quantum to find out about this, tell the principal, and have Dendy expelled. Either that, or put Dendy in a VR simulation where that happens, and her life is essentially her ending up on the streets as a bum. Which actually begs the question, why is KO still friends with Dendy? You know, I know the purpose of this episode, but this was not the way to go about it. I mean, this episode would have had a better ending if, instead of seeing the science fair, we saw Dendy getting beaten up by a bully, and KO stands there and does nothing after he tells Dendy they're not friends anymore after what she put him through. And I know that the point of this episode was for KO to suddenly want to learn how to tap into TKO's powers and be able to control them. But this is not the kind of episode you'd use to do that. In fact, the episode TKO Rules kinda shows how... In fact, the episode TKO Rules kinda proves that everything Dendy was trying to accomplish in this episode was a bad idea. Bad idea that could have caused this to happen even earlier. Miss Quantum's final full appearance, where she was actually given a speaking role, was in the episode The Sobatical. And since this show was written by a freaking liberal jackass, there's no way he would have actually continued to portray this character in a negative light. Since she is a school teacher, and schools are no longer about education, they're about brainwashing kids and indoctrinating them into liberal agendas. Therefore, as a jackass liberal himself, Ian Jones-Quartey would never allow himself to portray school in a bad way. I mean, they actually say directly that Miss Quantum is a villain in this exact episode, but in her final speaking role, they actually portray her in a positive light. Which is it? I mean, this really makes no sense. You don't see the Joker fighting for law and order in any of the Batman comics. You don't see Frieza or the Ginyu Force protecting innocent people in any Dragon Ball sequels, and you never saw Skeletor fighting for the side of good in any of the old He-Man episodes. Now I'm going to ask one of the questions that I often ask in episodes of sexism in movies and TV. And that question is, what if the genders were reversed? What if it was a boy psychologically torturing a girl until she goes on a destructive rampage? Dexter's Lab parody or not, this just simply isn't funny. Watching an innocent child get psychologically tortured like this. I mean, tell me, I'm sure somewhere out there was some sick fuck who got some laughs out of this. But let me ask those same sickos, would you still be laughing if this ended with, oh say, KO putting Dendy in a VR simulation to torture her psychologically? Like I said before, I mean, hypothetically, if KO did this to Dendy, and she ended up in a Groundhog Day style loop where she fails the science, comes in last in the science fair, gets expelled, and lives her life as a bum several times over till she goes insane, would that be funny? Would you sick pieces of crap still be laughing? And you know how I just said that not only is Miss Quantum a villain, but she is actually stated to be a villain in universe in the episode? Well, here's the thing. That's exactly how Dendy was acting. She was acting way worse than Miss Quantum, who is a villain according to OKKO's canon. This episode, Dendy is essentially acting like Scarlet from Total Drama Island. You know, that episode where she lost her mind, tried to take over the island, and ended up getting shot out of a cannon? And in that episode of Total Drama Island, Scarlet was revealed to be evil, both to the audience and the characters, seen as evil by both anyone watching, either in the real world or in universe, and pretty much got what she deserved. In this OKKO episode, Dendy acts exactly like Scarlet, but gets off the hook. Dendy was definitely the villain of this episode. One of the worst things about this atrocity is the fact that this little kid's pain is literally being played for laughs. And I'm not looking too deeply or misinterpreting jack or fucking shit. This kid's pain is the same to this goddamn joke. Which brings me back to Dexter's Lab. The quality Cartoon Network show that this sack of crap is making fun of. You see, Dexter's Laboratory did have a villain. That would be Mandark, not Dee. You see, Dee was just annoying and stupid. A portrayal that would never fly today and was a really good staple of the 90s. You know, back when Cartoon Network had way better quality. That aside, my point is that Dexter never really did anything to deserve Dee barging into his lab and smashing things as she saw fit. He just wanted to work in peace. And the last thing I want to talk about is GT himself, the creator of Dexter's Lab. He was amazing when he worked for Cartoon Network, and his talents even soared when he was promoted to Adult Swim. Now, I was wondering as to whether or not if this man made a parody of OKKO, you know, hypothetically in response to this video, how it would go over. In my opinion, they shit all over, I'd say 30% of his legacy. It would only be fair for GT to make an episode of Primal where, say, the main character would encounter time travelers from the future who would be parodies of the characters of OKKO and have, like, this massive joke in the episode where it's, the cave people are smarter than the OKKO parodies. In my opinion, the way Mystery Science Fair 201X turned out, such a parody would be an act of justice. In closing, this episode was just an overglorified stack of shit. There was nothing redeeming about it, and that title card's a fucking lie. They are not sorry for what they did. I can't believe they would even imply that they're apologizing to the crew of a good show like Dexter's Lab after shitting out such a dud. They are not sorry at all. I guarantee you of that.